one of the greatest, most creative, legendary effects artists ever to walk the earth, Stan Winston and his son, Matt Winston. The entire Son of Monsterpalooza and Monsterpalooza family for putting this together. Thank you, Elliot. Put your hands together for our host. Season 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. I rewatched it with my wife and my daughter this week, and very few movies hold up as well as that movie holds up. It's so great. And we have the stars of that film here today, so let's bring them out. Woo! Jenette Goldstein. We also have some representatives from Stan Winston Studio, from the art department, Andy Schoneberg. Come on out, Andy. And finally, right here. And finally, we have Craig Caton, who's representing the Stan Winston Studio mechanical department. Come out, Craig. So guys, we don't have much time, and we have a lot to cover. We are going to show you 4 clips during this panel, and we're going to talk about those scenes. We're also going to talk about some favorite moments from the movie, but before we get into any of that, I would like to start with the cast and tell us how you got involved with this iconic film. Why don't we start with John Connor himself, Edward Furlong. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Yeah. Okay, cool. What's up, guys?
Hey.
What's the question?
The question is, how did you get involved in this classic movie, dude?
It's a crazy sort of golden ticket, lottery situation, This never happens, but basically I was just hanging out at a boys club in Pasadena, and Mally Finn, the casting director of the movie, shout out to Mally Finn, she's awesome. She came up to me, and I'm like, because this is like a kid's place, you know what I mean? And I see this kind of older lady just smiling at me all the time. What's going on? And then she came up, and she's like, would you like to try out for a movie? And it's weird, man, it's like, the things we manifest, I think I always wanted to do something like that, so it just kind of came down from the heavens, and I went in, I auditioned, and I got the role, man, so yeah.
And what makes the movie so great in rewatching it is the relationship you develop with Arnold. Your mom is a psycho and she's not really loving throughout the film, but Arnold becomes this great surrogate dad. And your relationship with him is what gives that movie its heart, and you're amazing in the movie. So thanks for being here with us today. We're going to talk more about that.
Thank you. What mom isn't psycho, though, right?
Totally. All right, we also have the T-1000 here today. One of the great villains in the history of film, and the only man who could possibly step up to the T-800. Robert Patrick, how did you get this part?
Well, Matt, I'll tell you about that. When I met Stan Winston, the first thing Stan Winston, Matt's father, said to me was, Robert motherfucking Patrick. And he was saying that basically because Billy Idol was set to play the T-1000. Well, let me tell you this story. Billy Idol was sitting between the T-1000, and he was riding along on a motorcycle. A damn fine machine, a Harley Davidson. And he wrecked that motorcycle and he fucked up his leg. And all of a sudden Stan said, oh shit. They had to find somebody new, which opened up and created the opportunity for me to fill that vacuum and play that part. And so I owe it all to Billy Idol. And Harley Davidson. By the way, have I mentioned to you Harley Davidson of Santa Clarita?
Don't touch with that.
You can get an awfully good machine up there. See y'all later. That's it. Take care. I got some autographs.
He's out. He's out. You know, a little bit is all you need with Robert. All right. So we gotta go. We gotta go to the next. The only lady on this panel, although there's a few feminine males here, myself included. Jenette Goldstein is here. You know her. You know her as foster mom Janelle. You also know her as Vasquez from England. Badass from Near Dark and from So you also have an interesting story of how you came on board this project, Jenette. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, this one was kind of strange. I had done Vasquez, I've done Aliens, and I was living in England, and I came back to live in the United States, and was auditioning for lots of roles, and Jim called me up and said, how's it going? I said, you know, it's good, but they kind of don't know that I'm actually a character actor. They always think I'm who I was in the last film. He's like, I just had a kid, and he said, oh, but you're like the sweetest mom, and you should be doing mom roles. And I said, yeah, that's ever going to happen. And then one day he called me up and said, yeah, you know what? I got a mom role for you. She's not the greatest mom, not the sweetest mom. She kills people, but she's a mom role, so that's how I got it.
Well, it's a classic scene. We're actually going to watch the scene where Janelle takes out Todd today, and it's truly an acting masterclass. We also have another veteran actor. We have Danny Cooksey here. This was Edward's debut. This was not Danny's debut. He's on Different Strokes, a million TV shows, so you were a veteran. But how did you get cast? Was it the mullet? What was it?
The mullet will get you everything. Really, I think that's what it was. You know what? I don't even remember. Honestly, I just remember, going, my agent calling and said, you got this thing. And I went, oh, this is freaking awesome. And, I showed up, and it was just an enormous production, and it was so exciting. I'm absolutely blessed to be a part of it.
Well, rewatching the movie, it's hard to cast kids who can act well and not look like actors. And what works with this movie is you guys really seem like street kids. It works. And you guys seem a little rough around the edges. And it works for the movies. You both just seem real. It just seemed real. So.
Growing up on the streets of Compton.
That's right. Clearly scary people.
All right, I got some other scary people for you to meet real quick before we look at some clips. We'll start with art department member at Stan Winston Studio. I should say very briefly, Stan got his start back in '68, but what blew up his career was the first Terminator with Jim Cameron, and it started a lifelong collaboration between Jim and Stan. And when T2 happened, it was an opportunity for both of them to go even further and break even more ground. So this was really a huge milestone in Stan's career. And here to represent the crew that made him help him make it happen, because it always took a huge team, is Andy Schoneberg from the art department. Andy, tell us a little bit about how it all started for you at Stan Winston Studio and how you remember the project began.
How T2 started or how I started?
No, I don't want to hear about how you were born.
In the beginning was T2. The darkness. T2, geez, that was heavy on the heels of nothing. We had finished Edward Scissorhands, and a bunch of us were taking some time off, and we were getting calls from other studios saying, "Are you available?" Stan heard about that and called us up and said, "I have a project." And it was T2, it just hadn't been greenlit yet, so he brought us all back on. And we waited for the show to start, did some drawings and designs and stuff like that in the meantime. But that was the beginning.
And I know you had your hands all over many aspects of how the T1000 effects were executed, as well as the T800, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But thank you, Andy Schoneberg. Andy Schoneberg is still going strong in this industry. He's been working on the effects for many years. The Walking Dead series, if you love those, Andy Schoneberg is one of the people responsible for all that great work. And representing the mechanical department, we have Craig Caton. Also had some great years at Stan Winston's studio on Jurassic Park, on Leviathan as well. Let me think, Predator? A little bit of Predator. So tell us about how your first memories of T2 and getting involved.
Well, I just come off of Predator 2, working for Stan, and Stan had been kind enough to keep me on in between the show. I was working, fixing his car, and fixing Matt's car, Stan's daughter's car. Then we're working on Stan's Harley, and then Terminator 2 came up, and all of a sudden there's this amazing buzz that came out of the front office because several of John Rosengrant and Stan had just read the script, and they came back and they're like, "You're not going to believe what we're going to do," and we're like, "No, we're not." That's how that started.
Thank you, guys. This is our panel. Thanks for introducing yourselves, guys. We are going to structure this talk because we could talk about so many things. We're going to structure around 3 clips that we have to show you. And the first clip we're going to show you is the mall sequence. You have that ready and queued up? We're going to watch the clip. This is where it's finally revealed that the T1000 is actually a bad guy, and the T800 is actually the hero of the movie. But there's some great acting going on here and great effects. Let's watch the scene. That is an acting masterclass right there. She is playing the T1000, playing Janelle.
Actually playing not Janelle, playing like Betty Crocker. Like
T1000 is Betty Crocker versus So how did you pull that off? Because there are so many twists and turns in that short little scene. So many elements we see. And you start the scene in a way that's more natural so it doesn't tip it, right? And then it builds so well. How much of that did Jim kind of guide you through? And how much of that did you just walk into the scene knowing how you wanted to do it?
I think as I recall, I walked in knowing how, I wanted to do it because it wasn't Janelle. And the first time you see Janelle, she's sort of like stoned and, with her and Todd, and they're like, yelling. And so she's not really, she's the Terminator's idea of what Janelle was, so you don't want to tip it off too much to make it too fake, so the audience would know. So, it was interesting, as Robert was saying, we met in his apartment because we wanted to talk about, or people wanted to tell me how he was going to create the T1000. And I remember the one thing you had said to me was this idea of a praying mantis, that you had talked about your ears, how the tops stick out. Do you remember that? And how you like that feeling like that he sees with the tops of his ears. Even though you see the eyes, it's really the ears that are seeing. And if you notice the way, if you just think of that when you watch it, you just sort of notice that it's the ears that are seeing and the eyes are dead. So it was an interesting thing. So that was what I used, the idea of the dead eyes and seeing with the tops of the ears.
So Robert Patrick invited you to his apartment and told you to see through the tips of your ears.
There you go.
That's pretty much the way I start all my dates.
Oh my gosh.
I wasn't married at the time.
Well, what's also great about this scene is when you first see you in this movie, and those of us who were fans of yours in Aliens were like, that's Vasquez, but look at her. Like, you couldn't look more different. You had this crazy hair. Vasquez had a military crew cut. I mean, how much of that was you saying, Jim, I want to look nothing like Vasquez. Look at what I'm going to do.
Well, it's funny that I look like myself. That's how I do. With the crazy hair and the rest of it. Yeah. So anyway, it was funny. I was kind of incognito as myself as far as what I look like usually. But doing the effect, I mean, that was crazy because all I remember going down to the studio and doing the arm in latex, and then them painting. They took a picture of my arm, like, because they had to paint all the little freckles in. And then on the day when we shot it, you know, I just put my arm like that behind my back, and I don't know who it was crouched behind me holding the arm.
Yeah, it could have been
Any of you? and then Xander, of course, Xander had to stand there like deep throating this. It was horrible. It was a horrible afternoon for him. And then it was really, and then behind his head to have the effect of the knife going through, there were another guys, and I remember it wasn't working. It was like a little effect where the knife kind of went, and it wasn't. And Jim got furious that it wasn't working, and he had to stop, get this goddamn thing, you know, and they had to fix it to Jerry. So it was all like just jerry-rigging, these guys crouching behind me, doing it. And then as far as the effect, I mean, we were explained in words what was going on, but I just had to imagine, you know, what, and really it was, they just said technically, like, move your eyes here, move your eyes there, move your eyes, you know, you had to do something I remember there's also some part where I had to move my shoulder in a certain way, as if my arm was, you know, to have her line up the, you know, the didgeridoo. That's the technical term for what they were doing. So.
What can you guys tell us about the didgeridoo aspect of
please.
this scene? Craig or Andy, as we know there was the artificial arm aspect, and then there was the removal effect. What can you guys remember about that?
Boy, well, neither one of us worked on that, really.
Just fake it.
Yeah, it could have been.
Fake it, they don't know.
Where's John?
It was John. Nothing.
John's at his daughter Allie's
He
birthday.
had a birthday in those days too.
He did, didn't he? I remember there was a lot of time spent building the little pop-up thing.
At the back of the head, yeah.
The back of the head, so that when the blade was inserted or removed, it would either pop out or retract. And it actually, part that he deep-throated, that Xander deep-throated, was added onto digitally, so that it was a combo thing with digital lengthening of the blade as you pulled it out, and that little nub in the back collapsing in on itself. So that it looked like, if you look at it in slow-mo, you probably could see how the back of the head blade went in. And the other was a CG add-on, just lengthening, which is pretty frequent nowadays.
Yeah, and it works great. You notice the moment where she actually skewers Todd. You don't even see it on camera. And this was that crossover period when CG was coming in, but it was still used very judiciously in this film, and it worked so well. So that's Jenette Goldstein's huge moment in the film. So put your hands together again.
Something that was the subject of great discussion at the shop that you don't really think about was the blend between the metal and human flesh. It was done sculpturally fairly smoothly and needed to be for the vacuum metallizing. But we spent a certain amount of time just doing color studies of what you would go to, how you would transition from the flesh tone to the metal, and we ended up using the basic flesh tone, which then segued into a bronze color, which sort of matched both, and then faded out with a copper flare to it.
Well, it's a wonderful transition in that arm ring you guys built. So, well done, Andy Schoneberg, on behalf of the entire art department, of course. All right, we have another clip to show you guys. Next up, let me check my cheat sheet here, is the fight scene in the Asylum. This is the second showdown between the T-800 and the T-1000, and this scene reunites John with his mom, Sarah Connor. He's got blade arms, he's got crowbar arms. What an incredible scene. Before we talk to you, Robert, about your performance in that, Edward, again, this is a pivotal scene for John Connor.
Yeah.
He's reunited with his crazy-ass mom. And what was that like for you? I mean, that's a big part of the beginning of the film, you know, is my crazy mom and all this, but you're finally back together. You're working with Linda Hamilton. What was it like?
Well, it's like, working with Linda Hamilton and being like, damn, if she was my mom, I'd hate that. Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, no.
Just being honest. She was hot.
She was hot. She still is hot.
Still is hot. So you're a crazy mom in the asylum. So what are your memories of that?
Oh my God, no. She's like, in the movie, she's like the best mom ever, right? I mean, she is. She is hot.
Yeah.
And also, man, she's like protecting John. She's, getting him ready for the whole thing. I mean, that's a dedicated mom right there, dude. So I don't know. I don't think she's crazy. I think John thinks he's crazy. She's crazy at first until these assholes come out. So yeah.
Well, that scene's incredible because you realize there's actually 3 Terminators in this movie. It's Sarah Connor, the T-1000, the T-800. What are your recollections, Robert? I mean, in this scene, in the mall, we see you shooting without blinking. In this scene, we see you running and shooting without blinking. But once again, just heightening that sense of this guy is a missile, a Scud missile. What are your recollections of that Asylum scene?
We all had a crush on Linda Hamilton.
Here it is. Here it is.
That's the reality. So Eddie's correct. I don't know if this traveled to you guys. I think it did when I met with Stan initially. We were doing some training, some wushu, martial arts training, and my idea was that this guy being liquid would be, instead of resisting pressure, he would let it go with him. So if he's getting hit, instead of like trying to stand into it, he would just let it reform, and everything was on a core. So you'll notice when the hits go, he kind of gets hit. So and that's when the things were flowering, they were flying off. Was because we're adding the movement to it, but it all came right back to the core of the character. So this sequence was really interesting because, once getting through the bars was a pain in the ass because I couldn't hit the fucking mark. And you're looking for the fucking mark is, and I'm looking at Arnold way down there and I can't look at where I gotta go. And I'd walk in and I would be like quarter off. And they made me do it again. It was very technical, but it was like acting under a microscope. I think I've said that before. So that part, and I don't know how long that sequence was, but then the running starts. Once the running starts, and taking those hits was another thing difficult just to maintain the forward momentum because he could never go to if the T-1000 went left or right, he failed. It was all about, you never see him go left and right, you see him go straight. So if he's in a dead stop, he moves straight. He doesn't go to the left first or to the right first. Anyway, all this shit's in there. That's all what was in my head, and then these guys had the beautiful flowering things going on, but then it goes a step further because when the head flops open, that's a guy, my stand-in guy, Pasha, wearing a piece that fit over his head. Isn't that right? And then that flowered, and then that goes into a CGI.
And then you got the blade, and
then you got the blade, yeah. But all that stuff has to, it's like Eddie said, it's Jim Cameron conducting all that and bringing that all in together. But I don't know how long that sequence took to film.
Would like to go into how you guys created the splash head effect and the blade arm, but Robert, I just in researching for this panel learned that you were a jock in college, that you were a track and field and football athlete.
I played some football,
And it comes off in this film.
Oh, yeah.
You're constantly running. So much of your role is physical, and that's what sells the power of the character. So you're a badass. Wait, would you sign up for like a T1000 exercise or how to do that? I mean, oh my God.
It's funny you should mention that.
Harley Davidson.
It's funny you should mention that at Harley Davidson of Santa Clarita. We have a workout class that we're in development on. We'll get to that later. Come by and see me.
All right, so guys, let's talk about the effects in that sequence. There's a few things going on. We have the flowering hits. We have the splash head effect where the shotgun splits his head open. We have the blade arms. Who wants to start? Andy or Craig?
Oh, I think Craig should go.
Go for it, Craig.
Yeah, that was the splash head was one of my puppets, and I remember that when I first saw the artwork for it, which was basically exactly what you kind of see in the puppet. I was looking at him going, how are we going to do that? And we did, and it was really cool because it was one of the first effects that got accentuated with CGI over the top of it, and I think that it was one of the early attempts where the hybrid between practical effects and CGI effects works very well. Andy?
What do you think, Andy?
I remember that the sculpture was done by Mike Tersick, who was a star sculptor at Stan Winston's for many years.
Sculpted the T-Rex in Jurassic Park.
He did that very well.
With some help.
Andy is also an amazing sculptor. Don't get him wrong.
The Brachiosaurus from Jurassic Park, that's Andy.
So I don't know where I was going with that, but there was a lot of discussion about how to affect that especially with someone's head in there. I think there were actually two versions of the sculpture. One that was intended to be used more as a stunt mask, and the other that had the actual effect in the cages and all that.
That's right. And as Robert said, his stunt double was in there. His head had to be cocked back like this far so that the fake head would be here. And it was very, did you guys get a good gut shot when I did that? Yeah, it was a very cool effect. From the right angle, it looked like he had his head split open.
So there were a couple of effects like that in the film where we were able to hide Robert in one effect when you got the big cleave down your side.
Oh yeah, I actually did that. I remember that.
Yeah, that was built so that you.
That was it was almost like was it a rubberized shirt? Yeah.
And you had to wrench your body really far back sideways to make the effect work. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. And then that when we were doing the whatever you want to call it, the pointy finger into Linda. That was like a combination of me and maybe John Roseman.
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like somebody had their arm doing, I don't know.
Wait,
It's been a while.
That's been a while.
Yeah, I remember that
When it was up in the steel mill.
Well, where was your back? Like, I don't understand. Like, where the rubber shirt was, and you get split open.
Oh, that was the rod.
Yeah.
There was a thing, right?
Yeah.
That's the
You
technical
sculpted
term
that.
for it, yes.
I painted that.
You painted it, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Crazy stuff.
All right, you brought up the steel mill, so that's our last clip. We're gonna check out the steel mill scene. This is the scene where we think that T1000 has finally been conquered, but he's not. And we're gonna show that, and then we're gonna finish up our Q&A. So that scene was a callback to the factory finale of Terminator 1, equally, even beyond in terms of the iconic moments in that sequence. What are your memories of working in that awful factory for, I'm sure it was weeks at a time, Edward and Robert?
Oh, well, you go first because you were kind of talking about that. Yeah, like...
It was miserable being in that frozen ice makeup, and it was cold. Every day I went in and had to get painted like that. That particular sequence, I don't know, in my mind, it feels like it took 3 weeks. It was a stunt double that was a double amputee. So I do my part, and then they would cut to his legs, and he did his part, and he literally broke. Then they would shoot me, you know, and then there was a hole in the stage, and then I stood somewhere, and then there was legs fitted around me, or something fitted around me. Then we did the arm part. Then you guys had already cast that, and I always wondered why he had me open my mouth. Like, I didn't know the T-1000 was self-aware like that. I was always kind of curious, like, why did I go? You know, but I remember that, Stan, I mean, you guys, that's how we cast it, if I'm not mistaken.
That was the first instance I ever encountered on T2 of using scans of actors instead of light guns. And that was a scan that was done, I'm not sure where at the time.
It was up there near ILM because like the day after I got cast, I was on a private jet with Stan to there to do that laser shit scan.
And those scans were molded, and then clay boards were done with them, and they were cleaned up. But in answer to why the mouth was open, I think it just makes a more natural feeling cast. So, but I
But you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't think, I never thought of myself. There's a couple instances where I do stuff like that. Kind of go, you know, I give a weird like facial.
Well, it's kind of great. It's the first time you see the T-1000 kind of going, oh shit.
Yeah,
Like,
oh shit.
It's great.
I mean, it does work. But that particular sequence was very difficult. I do remember the liquid metal stuff. The cool thing about working with these guys and Stan and everybody and all the guys at the CGI, everything that they did was performance motivated. There wasn't a thing that they did that they didn't talk to me about. How am I going to do this? And we all collaborated together, which is what I think makes the performances stand up as time went on. We were all communicating. There's nobody involved with T2 that's insecure. This is like the top shelf creative people, ideas passed around, everybody's talking and communicating, and the number one thing was how to make it the best fucking movie of all time, which is, you know, where we were at.
Let's go into that a little deeper, because what makes this movie so great is not only the performance of the cast and the crew, but primarily the vision of James Cameron, who is probably one of those visionary directors in the history of Hollywood, and probably unlike any other director, is capable of doing pretty much every job on the crew better than any of his crew. He's really astounding in that way. I would love for you guys in our last, we just have a little while longer here, to talk about some gym experiences. He is a tough dude, but he gets results. Why don't we start with either you, Edward, or you, Robert, and we'll work our way down. So be thinking of gym stories, guys. Go ahead.
Amazing director, amazing guy to collaborate with. We created the T-1000 at my first audition. Everything you see that I did in the movie, he and I came up with, and it was a creative, collaborative experience that is very unique in my career. It was a free flow of information, and changed my life forever.
Edward, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, man, just looking back at all this, it just reminds me and hits home more just how lucky I am to have worked with Jim. He's, you know, he's a legend, man, you know. And in terms of him doing everything, actually, when we were shooting that sequence, I had this really terrible, disgusting habit of like chewing on my hair because it was so long. And Jim literally came over with a pair of scissors and cut my hair. So,
Problem solved.
Problem solved, yeah. So that's Jim for you, man. He does everything. You know, so cool, yeah.
So Jim. Danny, how about you? You only had a few chances to work with the guy, but what was it like for you?
It was just an amazing experience all the way around. It's like it's like as I sit back and look at this, it's like I remember reading the script, and then going like, what is this gonna look like in the end? And even filming it, just bits and pieces of going like, okay, that's like, you know. And I remember like I think it was the premiere, the first time that I saw it, and just being as equally blown away as I am sitting here and seeing it this amount of time later. It's just an amazing piece of work all the way around. These guys over here, man, holy jeez. Like, that's just crazy. This stuff is so amazing.
Well, Danny, you and your mullet are immortalized for all time in T2. You did an incredible job in that film. Everyone wants a friend like Tim when the cops come running. Yeah, I don't know what my friend is. And Jenette, obviously you and Jim have a long history.
Yeah.
What can you say about the experience of working with him on this, and generally speaking?
Well, generally speaking, just like Robert said, he changed my life by, giving me my first role, and actually, the only director to really get me, understand, what I did, what I do, and that, that I do different people, and just over and over, he's sort of brought me along and collaborated. Absolutely. The one job he can't do, he's not an actor. He can't act. No. Which has always been, he doesn't know. But as far as like his, what he's doing, you're just like a journeyman. Everybody's building a machine, from the art department to actors, everyone, and you're all there. And you better be there, or you'll know it. You'll be gone. And you're just working on the thing. It's just like you're just a working class actor, and everybody's just creating this vision of his, this story. You're creating a story, and it's incredible, incredibly fortunate.
And from the effects side, Andy, and you guys, we all know this is one of the greats. What was the experience in the shop creatively?
My pivotal experience with Jim on set was when we were shooting the sequence where they break into the center of the whatever where they're built computer chips, and they've got the arm and
the chip.
Yeah. And they go into the room and they throw them on the floor, and the canisters break and they pick them up. Well, right before we were shooting that scene, the clip that held the arm to the base broke. So we had to go to the props truck real fast and sort it out and get it reattached. Jim came out while we're in there figuring it out, and the props guy says, well, we just had trouble getting the vacuum tube open. And Jim said, you built an actual vacuum tube? Says, you know this is a movie, right? So we got it done, and we got the shot at first take, and it was all good, but we had to get a little attitude from Jim first.
Well, Jim, we're working for you. Of course we overbuilt this thing. We know.
Yeah, and you know if it hadn't been a vacuum tube, you'd say, what's the matter with you? Vacuum tube shattered completely differently.
How about you, Craig?
Well, Jim never left. Everything is completely delivered in Jim's mind, and we had some of the most amazing discussions, right down to like what we were calling like asymmetrical makeups. Like in the first Terminator movie, Arnold's robot face is on his left side and his human face is on his right side, because Jim explained to us that in Western society we read people like we read books from right to left. And that we are reading the man that is a Terminator. And then of course it got switched up in Terminator 2. Now it's the robot makeup on this side and his face on this side. So now we're seeing the Terminator that is a man. And it was really great discussions like that made the movie just so incredibly cool.
And with that, we are going to wrap up this panel once again. It's such an honor to be here representing my father, Stan. I know he would be beside himself to see this franchise still moving forward. And I want to give a brief shout out to the head of makeup effects for Terminator Dark Fate, who is here, Bill Corso. Bill, you might be able to talk to him afterwards, but Bill suggested maybe I'll come up and give some teasers about Dark Fate, but the studio said, no, you're not going to. No spoilers. What? You got something?
I did think of one thing. When I got a call from Tim Miller, who I'd done Deadpool with, and Tim said, I'm going to do a new Terminator movie. I was like, why? It's been done so well. You can't possibly make anything better than that. and why I could never improve upon Stan Winston what they've done, because we had done Deadpool, and he says, I'll give you 3 reasons to do it. 1, your family, and you have to do it because I'm doing it. 2, Linda Hamilton's back as Sarah Connor. And 3, James Cameron is involved in writing, making sure that this movie is going to be amazing. And he said, and it's the real T3. Our movie begins right after T2. So I highly suggest everybody in this room run to the theater. You will not be disappointed.
Run like Robert Patrick. And also Harley Davidson, and also the exercise program. Talk to Robert. You guys take a bow. The cast and crew.